All right, so get ready, everybody, because today we're diving deep into a true crime case
Oh, yeah.
that's both, it's chilling, and it really gets you thinking. We are going to be looking at the 1986 murder of Linda Marie Thies.
Okay.
And our guide for this deep dive is an episode of the Anatomy of Murder podcast.
I'm familiar.
Yeah, you know it.
I've heard it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of unpack how this whole investigation went down.
Okay.
And we're going to see how these little details,
Right?
seemingly insignificant details,
Yes.
can really crack a case wide open.
Yeah, that's always fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
How one little thing can just make all the difference.
Totally. And then, we have to talk about the emotional weight of these cases.
Oh, for sure.
How it really impacts everyone involved.
Yeah, it's a heavy topic.
Yeah.
But it's so fascinating.
It is.
To see how these investigations play out.
Absolutely.
Especially back then. This case is from 1986.
Right.
The technology was so different.
Oh, my gosh.
What they had to work with compared to what we have today.
It's night and day, right?
It's amazing.
So the episode kind of sets the scene.
Okay.
It takes us to November 1986, Washington, D.C.,
Okay.
and we meet these two young boys.
Okay.
They're playing near some railroad tracks,
Okay.
just, doing what kids do,
Yeah.
and they stumble upon a woman's body.
Oh, wow.
And it's not just anybody, it's a brutal scene.
Oh, no.
There's a severe head injury so bad that brain matter is visible.
Oh, gosh.
And right away, you
Yeah.
get this really grim picture.
Yeah, I bet.
And you really feel for Detective Dwayne Stanton.
Okay.
He's the lead investigator.
Yeah.
And you just know he's got a tough case on his hands.
That's a lot to deal with right off the bat.
It is.
I mean, a scene like that,
yeah.
plus the brutality of the attack,
Right.
it's just one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
They had no idea who she was.
No ID.
A Jane Doe.
A Jane Doe, adding another layer of complexity.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
To an already difficult investigation.
It makes it that much harder to figure out what happened.
Yeah, and we're talking 1986.
Right. Things were so different then.
No DNA databases.
Nope.
Security cameras weren't everywhere.
No, not at all.
Like they are now.
They were relying on teletype machines back then.
Really?
Yeah, imagine that typewriter is hooked up to a network.
Wow.
That's how they shared information about the case.
That's crazy to think about.
It is. Trying to solve a crime with those limitations.
It makes you really appreciate how far we've come.
It does, doesn't it?
Especially with forensic science.
Yeah, today it's a whole other ballgame.
DNA analysis, digital forensics, it's incredible.
It is, but back then,
Yeah.
it was mostly good old-fashioned detective work.
Right, shoe leather interviews.
Knocking on doors, following up on every lead.
Meticulously going through physical evidence.
Exactly.
That's how they did it.
Yep.
And that's where the 7-Eleven comes in.
Okay.
It's the last place Linda was seen alive.
So it's a crucial location.
It is.
But I bet it was frustrating, too.
Oh, incredibly frustrating.
No exterior cameras back then.
Nope.
No witnesses who could say for sure when she was there.
Exactly.
It must felt like a dead end.
I bet it was so disheartening for the investigators.
Yeah, it's like trying to solve a puzzle,
Right.
but with some of the pieces missing,
Exactly.
you can't see the full picture.
Right. And it's easy to get lost in the procedural stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But we can't forget about Linda.
Absolutely not.
She was more than just a case file. She
Right.
was a person.
Exactly. A 22-year-old woman
Someone's daughter, someone's friend.
with a whole life ahead of her.
And the podcast does a great job of showing that
Yeah.
they talk about her love for the ocean,
Oh, wow.
her struggles,
Everyone has those.
and her desire to turn her life around.
So she was trying to make things better.
She was.
That makes it even more tragic.
It really does. It adds another dimension to the story.
It does. It humanizes her.
Yes.
Makes her death all the more meaningful.
And you start to wonder, what was she thinking in those final hours?
Right. What was going through her mind?
The podcast really highlights this gap in the timeline between when she was last seen at the 7-Eleven
Right.
and when her body was found.
Those missing hours must have been agonizing for the investigators.
Absolutely. Those missing hours are like this black hole
Yeah, I get that.
in the investigation, filled with possibilities.
Endless possibilities.
And then out of nowhere,
Yeah.
the case takes this unexpected turn.
Okay, what happened?
This police officer from a neighboring county,
Okay.
he comes forward
Right?
and he remembers a traffic stop he made
Okay.
the very night Linda was murdered.
Oh, wow. So routine traffic stop.
Totally routine. He had no idea
Right.
that the woman he pulled over would
Yeah.
later be found dead.
He was just doing his job.
Exactly, following procedure, taking good notes.
That's important, those details.
It is.
You never know when they might come in handy.
You really don't.
So this seemingly ordinary traffic stop,
Yeah.
it becomes a huge break in the case.
A pivotal moment.
It's amazing how these things happen.
It really is. These chance encounters can have a ripple effect.
They can change everything.
And it's all thanks to those notes.
Right, the detailed notes.
The officer recorded the names of everyone in the car.
Okay, so he had Linda's name.
He did. Suddenly, the investigators have a lead.
A car.
Names to go with it.
It's a perfect example of why thoroughness matters.
It really does.
In police work, every detail counts.
Absolutely. It's like finding a needle in a haystack.
Right.
And realizing, wait, the needle was in my pocket all along.
Yeah, I love that analogy.
So what do?
What happens next?
They bring the car in,
Okay.
impound it,
Right.
and the forensic experts go over it.
Right. They're looking for anything.
With a fine-tooth comb.
Any trace of evidence?
Yeah, remember, this is before DNA testing was as advanced as it is today.
Right. So they're looking for fingerprints.
Hair fibers, anything that could help them.
Connect the dots.
Exactly.
Okay, what did they find?
In the trunk.
Yeah.
Traces of blood and brain matter.
Oh, wow.
A chilling confirmation that they're on the right track.
It must have been a relief.
In a way, yes.
But also, I bet it was unsettling.
Definitely, knowing what happened to Linda.
Yeah.
So, this physical evidence,
Okay.
along with the officer's statement,
Yeah.
it was a turning point.
It narrowed things down.
Yes, they could focus on the people in the car that night.
Okay, so they have a smaller pool of suspects now.
Exactly.
That's a big step forward.
And this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay, I'm all ears.
One of the men from the car,
Okay,
he walks into the police station
really? Just like that?
out of the blue, and he wants to tell his side of the story.
That's interesting.
We'll call him witness #1.
Right, witness #1.
He admits to being with Linda that night,
Okay.
but he tries to distance himself from the actual crime.
Oh, so he's playing it smart.
It makes you wonder how much of his story is true.
Yeah, is he being genuine?
Or is it just self-preservation?
Right, he doesn't want to get into trouble.
He claims he told the other guys to leave Linda alone.
But he admits to being there during the assault.
He does.
That's tricky. He's trying to minimize his involvement.
He is. It's a classic move.
What were his motives for coming forward?
That's the big question.
Yeah, it makes you think.
And remember, he had a prior criminal record.
Oh, so he knew the system?
Maybe he knew how to play the game?
That's possible. He might have been more cautious.
Right, more calculated.
And by going to the police first,
Yeah,
he gets to frame the narrative.
you're exactly right. He controls the story.
He's not the aggressor. He's the reluctant participant.
And it seems like it worked.
He never faced charges.
That's right, despite being there, seeing what happened.
That's surprising.
It is. So while they're interviewing him,
Okay.
another unexpected thing happens.
Oh, what now?
Terrence Waters,
Okay.
the owner of the car,
Right, the impounded car.
he walks into the police station with his mother.
Wow, talk about a plot twist.
I know, right?
What happened?
He confessed to her.
His mother.
His mother.
But what happened that night?
Yes, and she convinced him to come clean.
So he turns himself in.
He does.
That's incredible.
It is. So Waters sits down with the detectives.
Okay, and he tells him everything.
He gives a detailed confession.
Oh, wow.
He describes how he and another guy in the car,
Okay,
Roy Lee Lewis,
right.
they picked up Linda
Okay.
and drove her to a park.
And then what?
He describes the assault
This is awful.
and how Linda fought back.
She fought back.
She did,
Grr.
and she threatened to identify them,
Oh, no.
and they panicked.
So that's when it escalated.
It did. His confession was graphic
Too bad.
and disturbing.
It's hard to hear about these things.
It is. He described how they beat her to death
Oh, my God.
with a carjack.
A carjack?
Yeah.
That's brutal.
And then they disposed of her body.
Near the railroad tracks.
Yes.
It's a chilling reminder of how cruel people can be.
It really is.
Did the detectives believe him, though?
I mean, concessions can be tricky
They can. People confess to things they didn't do.
for all sorts of reasons.
Right, so were they skeptical?
Initially, yes.
Okay.
Especially since Waters tried to downplay his role.
Oh, so he was shifting the blame,
Unto Lewis, yes.
trying to make himself look less guilty?
But there was one detail
Okay,
they needed to verify.
what was that?
The carjack.
Okay.
Waters said he tossed it down a sewer drain.
Oh, wow.
So they had to go look for it.
To see if he was telling the truth.
Oh, exactly.
And did they find it?
Dwayne, the detective,
Yeah.
he volunteered to go down into the sewer.
He climbed down there.
He did.
Wow, that's dedication.
It was, and probably not very pleasant.
No, I imagine it was pretty awful down there.
Dark, grimy,
Yeah.
knowing the object he was searching for.
Right, connected to such a horrific act.
It's hard to even imagine.
It is, but he found it.
He did.
The car jack.
Yes, just where Waters said it would be.
And it was covered in evidence.
Blood, hair, brain matter.
Oh gosh, that's a grim discovery.
It was, but crucial.
Yeah, it corroborated Waters' confession.
It did. This one small detail, the car jack,
Right. Now,
became a pivotal piece of the puzzle.
it's incredible how these things happen.
It really is all about connecting the dots.
Building a case piece by piece.
And in this case, the dots were forming a very disturbing picture.
Yeah, so they had the confession
The murder weapon.
and eyewitness testimony from witness. #1.
What do you think happened next?
I'm guessing they arrested both Waters and Lewis
You got it.
with all that evidence against them,
It was only a matter of time.
and the wheels of justice started turning.
They did, but the story doesn't end there.
Oh, there's more to come.
There is a lot more.
Okay, I can't wait to hear it.
We'll get into it all when we come back for part 2 of our deep dive into the murder of Linda Marie Thies.
Sounds good.
Stay tuned.
I will.
Okay, so before we went to the break,
Yeah,
we were talking about Waters and Lewis.
right.
They had just been arrested for Linda's murder.
Right, the evidence was really stacking up against them.
It was.
But what about witness #1?
That's a great question.
The guy who went to the police first.
Right. He was there,
He saw what happened.
but he claimed he wasn't directly involved.
Yeah, he tried to distance himself from the crime.
So, did he face any consequences?
It's interesting, isn't it?
It is.
Because despite being there during the assault,
Right.
witness #1 never actually faced charges.
Wow, that's surprising.
It is, especially considering he admitted to seeing everything,
He did.
but he never faced any legal repercussions for his involvement.
That's wild. Do you think his prior record played a role?
It's possible.
He knew the system?
Maybe he knew how to work it to his advantage.
Like he knew how to talk to the police?
Exactly. Maybe he was more strategic.
More calculated in his approach?
Right, by going to them first,
Yes.
offering his version of events.
He got to control the narrative.
He did. He framed himself as a reluctant participant.
Not an active aggressor.
And it seems like it worked.
Yeah, no charges.
It makes you think about the fine line between cooperation and self-preservation.
Totally. Like, was he genuinely trying to help?
Or was he just trying to save himself?
Yeah, it's hard to know for sure.
It is, but from a legal standpoint,
Yeah,
the prosecution probably figured his testimony was more valuable.
right. To get convictions against Waters and Lewis.
Exactly. They were the main targets.
The ones who actually committed the murder.
So witness #1's involvement was kind of a sideshow,
It was, in a way.
but his testimony still played a part in the case.
It did. All right, so let's talk about those trials.
Okay, what happened to Waters and Lewis?
Did they both go to trial for Linda's murder?
So Waters was the first to stand trial,
Okay.
and Detective Stanton, the lead investigator,
Yeah, Dwayne St.
yeah, he actually attended parts of the trial.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, and he described the prosecution's case as incredibly thorough.
They really laid it all out there.
They did. They presented all the evidence,
Witness #1's testimony.
the forensic evidence from the car,
And, of course, the murder weapon.
the car jack.
Right, it sounds like they built a strong case.
They did, and the jury agreed.
What was the verdict?
Guilty
On all counts.
on all counts: murder, sexual assault, and kidnapping.
Wow, how long did the jury deliberate?
Only 4 hours.
4 hours.
Yeah, that's pretty quick.
It is. It seems like they were convinced.
Oh, yeah, they had no doubt about his guilt.
So, what about Roy Lee Lewis?
Did he go to trial as well?
That's what I'm wondering.
No, he didn't actually go to trial.
Oh, really? Why not?
After seeing how strong the case was against Waters,
Right, how convincing the evidence was.
Lewis decided to enter a guilty plea.
Okay, so he admitted to his involvement.
He did. He pled guilty to avoid a trial altogether.
I guess he figured it was the best option.
Yeah, he probably realized a trial would only lead to the same outcome.
A guilty verdict
Exactly. So both men ended up being found guilty.
of Linda's murder.
Right. One by jury trial, the other by guilty plea.
And then came sentencing.
What did they get?
Both Waters and Lewis received 20 years to life.
20 years to life. That's a long time.
It is, but is it enough?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is, considering what they did to Linda.
The brutality of their actions.
It's tough to think about.
It is, and the podcast really emphasized this.
The difference between justice and closure.
Right. Dwayne Stanton said it best.
He did.
He said the convictions brought a sense of justice,
For Linda and her family.
but it could never truly bring closure.
No, They'll never get their daughter back.
And the pain of her loss will always be there.
It puts things in perspective.
It does, no matter the legal outcome.
The emotional scars run deep.
They do. It impacts everyone.
Linda's family, the detectives.
Even witness, #1.
He'll probably carry that night with him forever.
Yeah, it's a ripple effect that goes beyond the courtroom.
This case really shows that
Even when justice is served.
there's still a long road to healing.
Absolutely, for everyone involved.
You mentioned earlier that Waters and Lewis got additional sentences
Oh, yeah, that's right.
for the sexual assault.
Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so there was a jurisdictional issue because the assault happened in Maryland,
Right, a different state.
separate from where the murder took place.
They actually faced separate charges in Maryland
They did.
for the same incident.
It's wild, right?
That is pretty unusual.
They were essentially tried in two different states.
For crimes stemming from the same event.
Exactly, and their sentences reflect that.
What did they get in Maryland?
Both men received an additional 20 years
20 years.
for the sexual assault charge.
That's on top of their sentences for murder.
And the judge was very clear.
About how these sentences would be served.
Consecutively, not concurrently.
So one after the other.
Exactly, not at the same time as their murder sentences.
So we're talking a minimum of 40 years behind bars.
At least 40 years
Wow, the judge wanted to make sure.
that they were held accountable.
For both the assault and the murder.
No question about it,
It really highlights the lasting consequences of their actions.
doesn't it? They took Linda's life,
Shattered her family.
and now they're facing decades in prison.
Their own lives irrevocably changed.
It's a heavy thought for sure.
It is. You know, one thing that really struck me,
About this case.
throughout this whole deep dive,
What's that?
it's the role of that police officer.
The one who made the traffic stop.
Yeah, the seemingly routine traffic stop.
Right. He had no idea.
That he was interacting with a future murder victim.
It's chilling when you think about it that way.
It is. It emphasizes how interconnected our lives are.
You never know how your actions might impact others.
Exactly. That officer's decision to pull that car over.
And take detailed notes.
It was a pivotal moment in the investigation.
It was, without his actions.
Who knows how long it would have taken
To identify Linda.
or to find her killers.
It's amazing how these seemingly small things.
Can have such huge consequences.
It really is his meticulous note-taking.
It literally cracked the case wide open.
It's almost poetic in a way.
It is. And it's a powerful reminder,
That we never know how our choices
no matter how small,
might affect the lives of others.
for better or for worse,
It's a sobering thought, and it makes me wonder,
what else might have played a role?
what other small details were there?
That had a big impact on this investigation.
We'll discuss that and more when we come back for the final part
Okay.
of our deep dive into the murder of Linda Marie Thies. We've been talking about this murder case and how that one traffic stop
Yeah.
really changed everything.
It's amazing, right?
It is. Makes you think about what other small details
Yeah, all those little things.
maybe seemed insignificant at the time,
Right. Like they didn't matter.
but actually had a huge impact on the outcome.
That's a great point. And it really shows you that butterfly effect.
Butterfly effect.
You know, how one small change can lead to much bigger changes down the line.
Right, like a chain reaction.
Yeah. And this case is full of them.
It is. Like, remember how Waters confessed to his mother?
Oh, yeah.
And she was the one who convinced him to go to the police?
Right. She urged him to come clean.
If she hadn't done that,
Yeah.
who knows how this whole thing would have played out?
They might never have gotten a confession from him.
Exactly. Or it could have taken a lot longer.
And the case might have gone cold.
It's crazy to think that a conversation between a mother and her son
Right. A private conversation.
could have such a big impact on a murder investigation.
But that's how it goes sometimes.
It is. Human emotions, relationships,
Yeah.
they play a huge role even in these really complex cases.
And, you know, another thing that stood out to me
Okay.
was the forensic evidence.
Right. From the trunk of the car,
The blood and brain matter.
those tiny traces of tragedy.
It's chilling when you think about it.
It is, but they were enough
Yeah.
to back up the officer's story.
Right. And prove that the car was connected to Linda's death.
Like a microscopic clue
Yeah.
that unlocked this huge door in the case.
It's all about those little details.
It is, and when you put them all together,
Yeah.
you get this web of evidence.
That's so strong.
And it ultimately led to Waters and Lewis being convicted.
Exactly. They couldn't escape it.
And it's a testament to the investigators.
Yeah.
They were so meticulous.
They didn't miss a thing.
They didn't overlook anything.
And their persistence really paid off.
It did, but you know,
Hmm.
we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Justice doesn't always mean closure.
That's right. It doesn't erase the pain.
Dwayne Stanton said it himself.
He did.
Even with the convictions, Linda's family, they still have to live with this loss.
They'll never get her back.
There's no making up for that.
And for the detectives
Yeah.
working on a case like this,
It takes a toll.
a huge emotional toll,
They see the worst of humanity.
the darkest corners of human nature,
And it stays with them.
even when justice is served.
It makes you really appreciate their dedication,
It does.
their sacrifice.
Dealing with these tough cases day after day.
It's not easy.
It's not. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what are some of the key takeaways?
What do you hope people listening will walk away with?
I think this case, Linda's case,
Yeah.
it shows us that justice,
Yeah.
it's not just about punishment.
Right. It's more than that.
It's about honoring the victim,
Supporting their loved ones.
recognizing the impact these crimes have on everyone.
The ripple effects.
Exactly. It's not just a simple equation.
No easy answers.
No guaranteed closure.
But there's this constant search for truth.
Yeah.
A commitment to uncovering the facts.
And a hope that by understanding these cases,
yeah.
we can learn from them.
And maybe even prevent similar tragedies in the future.
It's a long shot, but it's worth striving for.
It is. And, one of the most powerful lessons from Linda's story
Yeah.
is that we're all connected.
In ways we might not even realize.
A random traffic stop, a mother's love for her son.
A tiny speck of blood.
These small details, they converge.
Yeah.
They shape the course of events.
For better or worse.
It's a reminder that every choice we make,
Every action we take.
it can ripple outward and affect other people's lives.
It's a powerful thought.
It is. So, for everyone listening,
Yeah.
we want you to think about your own life.
Okay.
Those chance encounters, those
Yeah.
small decisions.
That have shaped your path.
How have they impacted you?
And how might your actions, even the little ones,
impact the world around you?
it's something to think about.
It is. And that wraps up our deep dive.
Into the murder of Linda Marie Thies.
Thanks for joining us.
We hope her story has stayed with you,
And made you think about all those delicate threads
that connect us all.
and the impact of even the smallest details in this grand tapestry of life.
It's been a fascinating discussion.
It has. And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.